It means it's time for Helping Seniors of Brevard. I'm John Harper, and let me introduce the host of Helping Seniors of Brevard and the executive director of the organization as well. Kind of like I always like to say, a daily double or a BOGO. Here is none other than Kerry Fink. Hi, Kerry.
Hey, John Harper. Good afternoon. It's always good to be on the radio, gathering at lunchtime, midweek, Wednesdays, right here on 90.3 FM, WEJF. And welcome if you're listening to us online at WEJF.net. And welcome if you're choosing to hear this as a podcast, because we make sure this is available every place good podcasts are heard. So whether it's Apple iTunes or Spotify or any of those kind of places, you're going to find Helping Seniors Radio, because the mission of Helping Seniors nonprofit is to educate, inform, and connect you and those you care about to resources that are going to make a difference according to your aging plan. Our founder, Joe Steckler, always talked about the importance of trying to get ahead of some of these things. And that's what we try to do through the Helping Seniors organization. Now moving into 15 years of service, we've operated the county senior information helpline at 321-473-7770. That's the number that helped more than 4,000 families last year navigate everything, all things seniors, whether it be legal, housing, medical, financial, transportation. They're going to try to get you connected in some way to something that's going to make a difference. And speaking of people who are very good about connecting you to things that can make a difference in your life, it's one of our favorite people, Dr. Lee Sheldon, noted area periodontist with Doctors Sheldon and Furtado Solid Bite. Hello, Dr. Sheldon. How are you today?
Good afternoon, Kerry, and good. And how are you?
I am excellent, and I'm excited about the topic because we've kind of touched on this a little bit throughout many of the different television shows, radio shows, columns that you've contributed. And by the way, if you happen to be new to the Helping Seniors world, we have done our best to make sure that we put everything together for you in a nice, neat little package. You could either subscribe to the YouTube channel, Helping Seniors Brevard. You could like and follow us along on Facebook, Helping Seniors of Brevard. And you can go to the website, which is helpingseniorsofbrevard.org, because all the TV shows, all the radio shows, all the different articles and things in the Senior Scene magazine are literally put into a library fashion there. So if you hear something that's interesting, you can go back and hear about it. But Dr. Sheldon, we have talked many times along the way about the fact that your medical practice, your periodontic practice is really a private pay. And this is going to be a good conversation about that, why we call it a private practice. And so I'm looking forward to getting into that. But I guess maybe we should start with, they always like to start with definitions. What does private practice actually mean? We would normally think that every doctor or medical professional was in private practice.
Yeah, you would think that, and it's interesting, particularly in dental care. I won't cover medical care, although I can. But let's stay with dental care for the moment, because that's my passion, and that's where I've been for the past many years. And that is one where a dentist decides that he or she, in fact, is going to, in my definition, serve the patient exclusive of what insurance benefits may be. Furthermore, particularly within dentistry, but also within medicine, there are illusions of private practice, but private practice may not, in fact, exist. Ooh, what does that mean, Kerry? What does that mean? It means that the name of the practice is retained, but the person who owns the practice or who owned the practice sold to a corporate organization who is now controlling the practice, and therefore it could be Dr. John Smith, but in fact it's controlled by a ABC corporation upstairs in a different place in a different city entirely.
Aha. So that makes it sound, well, I mean, I guess I don't necessarily assume right off the bat that that would be horrible, but it does seem a little bit like you're having to dig beneath the surface to understand what's going on. Because I guess if if you said, well, my name is so-and-so, and this is my dental practice, and then you find out, well, they have a whole bunch of silent majority shareholders who are actually saying you can do this and you can't do that. It's a little less than the person just saying, I'm running my own practice. I guess this would be like the layperson's view of it.
It is, and that doesn't necessarily mean that things are not honest and they're not above board. But they can, if there's somebody else that you're beholden to, whether it's overtly or covertly, you've got that idea in mind, which may affect the laboratories that you choose, the procedures you decide to do, those types of things. Now there's somebody else who's thinking about that along with you. I decided not to take that road. It is a road that many, by the way, in my profession, in periodontics, have chosen to take. And these are very well-respected periodontists, so I'm not saying that it's a total negative. But to me, whenever you're talking with the doctor owner, well, the doctor owner could not have your best interests either, and maybe thinking about his own profits rather than the corporate entity thinking about the profits. So I'm not necessarily saying it's bad. It's just something that you should be aware of, that there may be another owner that's involved, so that when decisions are being made, they could be influenced by somebody else.
You know, it's interesting because you see, we've talked also so often that you see these commercials on television and it's, you know, XYZ Dental Corporation now in your city and things like that. And that's kind of clear. You kind of figure like, okay, that's the Walmart of dentistry or something. I don't mean that wrong. I'm just saying it's like, okay, theoretically, if I went to, you know, a city in Colorado, if I went to a city in Florida, you know, theoretically, I'm going to have the same dental experience. I guess, you know, that would be the thinking behind that. But what we're talking about today is going beyond that. That would be if I go to, you know, I'm making this up, Dr. Kerry Fink, and I think I'm seeing a periodontist who has his own practice locally, but in fact, he's actually controlled by, you know, XYZ Corporation out of, I don't know, Portland, Oregon or something. How could a patient, if the name isn't clear, how would a patient figure out who's in control here?
It's very difficult to find out. You actually have to ask, is this corporation wholly owned by you, or is it owned by somebody else? And that person, the doctor should be able to reveal that. Now, let me give you, I don't want this to be a total negative on corporate owned. I practice the way I want to practice, and I'm comfortable doing that. But understand there are two aspects to that practice. When I was really active, and right now, as you know, I'm an advice giver. I do full examinations. I tell people what I think they need, the different alternatives, and that kind of stuff. I'm no longer doing the treatment. But understand that most doctors are not business people. And therefore, they're happy to give up the business to somebody else to run the business, to run the personnel, to run the systems and all that kind of stuff, and just be a doctor. So I happen to like business. I happen to like, I'm involved in marketing, and
yes,
it's part of being on the radio and having done commercials and all the things we do. I just love that. I love that, like that kind of it. I also love the one-on-one relationship with the patient. But that does make me, in these days, an odd duck, because running a business now is not the same, or running a practice now is not the same as it was when I first got into practice in 1980. There's more demands, there's more competition, there's more everything that you've got to deal with and you've got to overcome, with more regulations and all of the things that are involved with helping work with personnel. All of that is something that a doctor does not necessarily want. And so it could be that if you are in that situation and you decide, and we'll talk about the specifics here in a second, but if you decide that you're going to be part of a corporate entity, it could be, hey, I just want to be able to see my patients and let somebody else worry about everything else. So it's not such a bad thing. As a matter of fact, if you're working in a corporate entity like that, hidden or not hidden, as long as the practice itself is profitable to the corporation will leave you alone. It could be that you're making all the best decisions for patients and it's profitable at the same time. And yes, practices have to be profitable too. And the corporate entity will say, hey, good, you're doing great. Just keep on going, do whatever you'd like. So it's not necessarily bad things. It's just something that you should be aware of, that corporate entities are here. There had been a medical practice for many, many years, and now they've got an increasing foothold in dental practices. I don't know the percentage now, but I think it's well over 20% now that are corporate owned, and it may be much more than that. I may be going on old statistics.
You know, as you're describing this, my mind goes into thinking about restaurants. You know, we have chains of restaurants that are owned. And so you understand when you go from city to city that if I go look for Golden Arches in one city and I order a particular sandwich and I go to another city and look for the Golden Arches and order that same sandwich, is going to be it should be fairly similar. And I guess that's maybe like a plus side of that. And then to take that a step further, I think there are certain restaurant chains that are owned by corporate entities that presumably have a lot of expertise in running restaurants. And so some of the finer names that you see nationally are owned by big companies. And yet, so it seems like there can be some advantage to that. Again, it's the consistency. It's the fact that you can go from one city to another and expect more or less the same experience and more or less the same menu. But it seems like the flip side of that, though, is that the ones who usually get those top ratings, you know, the true gourmet, the places that have the waiting list that takes you half a year to get into, they typically tend to be private owned because the chef really can control the dining experience, what's on the menu, and all those kind of things. And I'm wondering if that analogy plays into any of this conversation when we're thinking about the dental world. It's like when you are the person who's running your practice solely, you can really focus on the customer experience without necessarily having to think about who else you have to answer to.
Yeah, I think the analogy is a spot-on analogy, and I want to divide it into two things. You just mentioned the customer service, and by the customer service itself can be provided by a corporate entity very well. In fact, maybe even better, because that's where personnel are being trained by corporate personnel to deliver a good, sound experience. And generally speaking, the corporate entity may be better at doing that than the individual doctor. Where the chef comes in, and you've seen chef TV shows, and you've certainly gone to chef-owned restaurants even around here, you can have a chef who's very, 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 very creative. And that chef will then attract people to his or her restaurant because of the creativity that person provides. I'd say the same thing could occur within dental care, that there are more creative dentists than others. There are more creative physicians than others. There's some who follow who go along the common way of doing things and treating things. And then there are those who kind of stand out in some way because not only is the customer service better, but the treatment is different. And the treatment is something that people will seek. In our case, we were known for dental implants for many years, but a lot of people do dental implants. We're still one of the biggest dental implant providers. In fact, we were told we're still the biggest dental implant provider in Brevard County. But wow. Non-surgical periodontal care, we stand out. I mean, there are only a handful of practices in the entire country who do non-surgical periodontal care the way we do. And so that is chef-driven. And, new chefs have taken over the office, but in terms of the non-surgical care, that's something that Rebecca and I developed 25 years ago, and now the doctors are doing that, and now we've got Morgan and Jessica who are doing that, and they keep on doing better and better and better, and I'd love for it to catch on all over the place, but it hasn't. That's why I went to Phoenix a few weeks ago. You know, we're still doing something a little bit different, and that's where chef-owned and chef-trained may make a big difference.
Well, it also seems like, to continue our little restaurant analogy here, one of the advantages you have when you are independent and you're kind of chef-owned and operated, somebody comes in and maybe they've dined at the establishment for a certain time and they ask, is this possible to whip up something a little bit along the line? You did some of this and you did some of that. Maybe you could put that together. And all of a sudden the chef can say yes, whereas if you were at a chain restaurant, they're going to say, sorry, which item number on the menu would you like? And I do think that's one of the challenges, at least from the outside looking in, that we have anytime we're talking about dental or medical, is that sometimes things follow a certain general pattern, but maybe the specific needs of the patient are going to be different, whether it's because they want to approach a thing a certain way. They have certain priorities, like my smile is everything. I just want it to be absolutely perfect. Other people say, no, I want, good quality eating experience. I want, and everybody has a slightly different objective, right? And so when you, as the chef, if you will, are able to kind of make sure that what you're serving is exactly what the customer's looking for, it seems like that's probably the best possible outcome for the patient.
Yeah, I think that's a good analogy. Let me tell you a story. I don't know if stop me if I've already told, the listeners may not have heard it. But I began my non-surgical journey in 1987. I've been in practice for 7 years, and I took a course with Perry Ratcliffe, who was an old periodontist, who's actually was younger than I am right now. And I saw what he was doing out in Scottsdale, Arizona. And I said, all right, we're going to stop doing whatever we were doing, and we're only going to do non-surgical care for our patients. I made that decision. Of course, the staff said we're going to go out of business if we do it that way, but I did it the way I wanted to do it anyway. It gave me, and so we did that for almost a year, about 8 months. And it gave me an opportunity to observe how well a patient could heal without our ever putting a knife to it. And understand scalpel and surgery was part of everyday periodontist. It still is in many practices. But it gave me the opportunity of just sitting and observing. And I didn't care about the money. My wife cares. As long as my wife was looking for the checkbook, we were paying our bills, we were okay. And the deal I made was at that time, I said, I'm going to do your non-surgical care at surgical fees. And if you need surgery done, I'll do it at no charge, which was so far off the charts at that point. I mean, everybody would look at me and say I was nuts. But it did give me that opportunity. I don't think if I was working for a corporate entity that I could have done that. Fast forward to today, where we did our non-surgical work, it gave me the opportunity to observe, and then the periodontal endoscope came out, and we bought it in the year 2000. It gave me an experience base to work from, so then when we got the endoscope, and Rebecca was the one who was doing the non-surgical care in 1987, we had that base of experience already, and we could build upon that base of experience to the point now where we nearly never do periodontal surgery for chronic periodontitis.
What you're saying is that innovation usually comes out of independent thinking. And I was thinking about this, we always love to read books by, people like Bill Gates or Stephen Jobs or, some people with Elon Musk or whoever, but people who are just advanced thinkers who are really stretching the boundaries. Usually those big innovations don't come out of, a corporate environment, because corporate environment doesn't normally reward risk taking. And what you were just describing was you were willing to go a little bit, if you will, off-roading, but with the best interest of the patient in mind.
Yeah, it's true. It also doesn't come out of universities. It's interesting that universities are not innovative. Universities might then go and prove or disprove what I was able to accomplish clinically. But usually it's the individual who makes the decision, and the research is done afterwards to either justify the use of it or say, hey, that's not really working. It's only in this guy's imagination.
Well, I think we've answered this question, but I did want to ask this. So you said probably we're guessing that maybe, almost maybe even a fifth of dentist office, regardless of the name of them, are now in some form corporate owned. So I think the answer is that a dentist might choose to do that because they want to offload that part of the responsibility and just focus on dental practice, because you're right. There are two arts here. One is being a top-notch medical professional, but then also you do have to have some business acumen to keep your practice running with excellence, I think.
Yeah, you do. And so if you're interviewing the dentist and you're saying, are you corporate owned? And the dentist says yes, then the next question will be, well, how does that influence my dental care? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And you just let that sit so that the dentist can answer the question. And if you want to go further, well, does that influence the materials you choose? Does it influence the laboratory you choose? You could start to ask, you start to dissect it down. Now, that doesn't mean you're getting a bad laboratory. It could be that a good laboratory wants the business of this particular corporate entity. But if you look at us and we're working with laboratory technicians, we know who the good laboratory technicians are and who aren't. And if we're working with a smaller lab, we've chosen that lab because of the quality of that laboratory technician. Or even a bigger lab, we choose the technician that we want to work with within that laboratory in order to be able to get the work that we want, because there's A, B, and C in everything. And we have to choose the people that we work with in order to be able to deliver the service, deliver the product that we want.
It's a fascinating conversation we're having with Dr. Lee Sheldon, with Dr. Sheldon and Furtado, Solid Bite. Noted.
And I'm not for Dr. Sheldon and Furtado, by the way. I'm not included. That's my son, Dr. Sheldon and Furtado. I'm just there to entertain people.
Well, and a fine job you're doing. And we're talking about why practice. But what I want to say is, what's interesting is you kind of have really the best of all worlds. We talk about the fact that you, because of your experience, your innovation across the years, the fact that people call you to come out and share your own expertise, both clinically. We've been involved in many different studies and things that have impacted and advanced the periodontic care, but also just from a business standpoint, that you help other practices run their businesses effectively. You've kind of been on both sides of that. So the great thing is you've got wonderful practitioners who then have the benefit of your wisdom and expertise, and it kind of like gives the best of I would think, of all worlds. And I wanted to say that because we're getting ready to take a mid-show break here in just a moment or so. But you guys, for example, you innovate a great program that helps us as a charity. You call it Solid Bite Gives Back, and it's a great way that you kind of pull all this stuff together that a person can get a great overall exam, spend a couple hours with you, so you as the dental practitioners really know everything is going on. And yet, as a charity, helping seniors of Brevard gets the benefit, which I personally think is wonderful. Talk about that program.
Love that program. I don't know how we came up with it. We came up with it, and boy, it's just been fantastic for us. It's been fantastic for the charities. It's been great. So all you do is call the office at 321-259-8000 and say you heard Lee Sheldon with Kerry, Fink, or however you want to say it. I want to take part in Solid Bite Gives Back. And what that means is for a $50 donation to helping seniors of Brevard, you'll get x-rays, full x-rays, CT scan, full examination, the entire experience, including, and my job is to predict how your mouth is going to do for the rest of your life. That's what I do. And I spend a lot of time doing that in order to be able to give you an overall view to say whether it's worthwhile spending money on some teeth or not, so that you have a full perspective.
All right.
321-259-8000, and we'll be happy to do that.
All right. Thanks, Dr. Lee Sheldon. We'll be back with the second half of Helping Seniors Radio in just a moment. We're going to keep on this topic, why private practice.
The second half of Helping Seniors of Brevard on this Wednesday afternoon. I'm John Harper. Let's get back to the show right now with your host and the Executive Director of Helping Seniors of Brevard. Here's Kerry Fink. Kerry?
Hey, thank you, John Harper. Always good to be with everyone on the radio, and especially glad that you are here and tuned in as we gather lunchtime Wednesdays right here on 90.3 FM WEJF. And also, welcome back if you're listening online, WEJF.net. And as so many people do, if you're still listening to the podcast, we appreciate you being here. And if you're not hearing us on a podcast, you may want to, because a lot of times what we've discovered is people hear good information on the radio. Maybe they missed part of the show because they were running errands and had to shut the car radio off or something like that, or simply that the show has a lot of meaning for somebody they know and they want to share that with you. And so they'll go back and hunt the podcast and make sure that people can access the whole program. And our guest today is one worthy of access. His name is Dr. Lee Sheldon. He's noted area periodontist. We're having a rollicking, how do you like that word? A rollicking conversation about why private practice. And during the first half of the show, we're talking a little bit about something that I guess I wasn't really as familiar as I should have been, Dr. Sheldon, is that I knew about, big name corporate dentists, meaning like you'll see their commercial, XYZ Dental now in your location. And obviously it's part of a big chain. But I didn't know that oftentimes you might see somebody's name on a shingle, but they might still be corporate owned. That was kind of news to me.
Yeah, by the way, the initial, we haven't talked about it yet. It's called DSO, Dental Service Organization. And there are companies that buy practices. The most common one, the one I know the best, is Heartland Dental, H-E-R-T, Heartland. And they buy practices, but you don't see the Heartland name on the name of the practice. And there's several Heartland-owned practices right here in Brevard County.
Wow, did not know. Well, one of the things that I wanted to kind of maybe zoom in on, because I do feel like there's so many things that over the years are worth taking a look at as a great example is what you have built with your practice. Well, while you're kind of retired from the day-to-day hands-on dentistry, you have great dentist, Dr. Matt Sheldon, who's an amazing general dentist. In fact, we've done shows together on the Helping Seniors TV show. I would like to refer you to this one that I remember we did called Cosmetic Dentistry. And I remember I learned a lot of things, that not everything that you have to do has to cost a bank account load to be able to do. There was a lot of things that he shared, some things that can be done very cost effectively in that show. So he's terrific as a general dentist, cosmetic dentistry. I think at one point he was named one of the top 40 dentists under 40 and all kinds of accolades. But the other is
now he's 40, Kerry. Now he's 40.
so now he has to get on the best dentists over 40 list, I guess. That's right. That's it. And Dr. Sheldon Furtado is amazing. You've talked about the fact that he comes out of the same kind of periodontal expertise that you developed over the years, that he even goes back, to special trainings and all kinds of things, and really to excel in that career as being a top-notch periodontist. So you have some great folks who work together with you, and then you kind of like have this ability, this overview where you're able to provide insight, diagnostic skills, and all those things. But I guess my question coming back to this is that it seems like there's so many advantages that you have developed to the point that you are sought after by other dental practices for expertise in how to run a practices. But how do you do this? Like if our theme is up against, corporate dental or dental service organizations, how is it different when it comes to treatment planning, the way you would look at it?
All of us are different when it comes to treatment planning, and we all look at things a different way. I think if we're talking about the basics of treatment planning, it is you need this procedure and just get this done, and everything will be okay for now. Okay, so that's the basic is procedure. You need a crown, you need a scaling, you need this, you need that, which is fine, and that's what most people need, by the way. But a lot of people that we see are in the midst of major decision making. They've got major periodontal disease, major decay. They have a full mouth situation going on. And I got to tell you, I just saw a patient yesterday. The patient had gone to a practice, it was probably 4 or 5 years ago, and had 4 crowns done, 4 front crowns done, and they look good. The crowns we're doing well. But now that person has major decay. I don't know if that major decay was around at that time. My guess is that some of it was there, but she only wanted to concentrate on her front teeth, and so the dentist did the 4 front teeth. Well, she's in the presence of decay. In other words, she has the right kind of bacteria. Her acid level in her mouth was off the charts, very high acid level, which is fairly easy to measure. And so her proneness to decay was fairly high. So I said, with all of this that's going on and you're starting to get decay under one of these relatively new crowns, I think what's going to make more sense for you will be extraction and a full upper denture. And of course, her response to me was, well, if I knew that, I wouldn't have spent all this money on these crowns. And I'm not saying the dentist did anything wrong, but it is one of, and this is what I like to do, and I think I'm fairly good at it, is to do an overall assessment to determine whether it's worthwhile doing that kind of work. And so if my diagnostics say you've got a high acid level in your mouth, you may be a sugar eater, and I see you're prone to decay, I'm more likely to say, well, let's not invest too much money on teeth. We can keep them going for a while, but I wouldn't spend the money on crowns. I would say, all right, you want to keep them going, that's fine. If you want something that's looking good, let's take the money that you would have spent on the crowns and apply it to dental implants, because dental implants don't decay. It's that kind of a thought process that I pride myself in, that we're looking at the patient, we find out the DNA of the bacteria sometimes when we see aggressive periodontal disease, when we see acid levels, when we go over your lifestyle and your preferences and be able to put together what the risks are before you decide to make a major investment in your mouth. That's what we spend time doing. So whether you need just a cleaning or whether you need a full mouth reconstruction, it's the same examination. It's all of those factors that we're looking at to make sure that you're doing fine. And then if all you need is a cleaning, or sometimes you don't even need a cleaning. You're doing fine at home. You don't need cleaning at all. At least we've gone through the assessment to say everything's okay. And if you do need something, let's plan on what you need so you're not spending money twice. The most expensive dentistry in the mouth is dentistry that you redo.
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt. And I guess that's a question that probably brings a great deal of frustration, is like, wow, I had this done some years ago and now this is causing me a problem. But I guess, to kind of keep pressing along this private practice conversation, let me ask a question, because I've heard you guys, like when I've been in the office, I've heard somebody explain when the phone rings, one of the people says, no, we will help you file your insurance, but we don't actually accept it directly here. And I wanted to ask you about that, because that does seem like maybe for some people that raises a question like, well, how do I make this work? But that was a choice you made.
It was a choice I made very early on in practice. Early on in practice, one of the major employers in this office paid 100% for periodontal surgery. So a patient would come in and they don't need periodontal surgery, but because the insurance company paid for periodontal surgery, the patient wanted me to do periodontal surgery. You understand the dilemma that produces, not just for the patient, but for me? I'm providing a procedure because insurance pays for it, when in fact that's not necessarily the procedure that's in your best interest and puts you at further risk.
And, it's an interesting dynamic, because it's kind of like a case where I guess it does create an ethical line. Like, well, I can get paid over here if I do this. And maybe it causes you to chase one path of treatment where maybe another might be quite sufficient. Is, I guess, how.
Yeah, there's a big danger, and that's in medicine as well. Well, the insurance is paying for it, and so I'll do it. It takes away your critical thinking as a receiver of services or as a patient. It's taking away that, because you're saying, well, as long as insurance covers it, everything's fine. I think particularly now with so many things that we can look at, references we can look at easily on the internet. I'm not saying the internet is entirely accurate. In fact, it's probably more inaccurate than it is accurate. But there are opportunities for us to evaluate different points of view before making a decision on which way we want to go. If you're capable of making a decision on what kind of roofing materials to use and who should be the good roofer, you're also qualified to do that for dental care as well. I know it seems that it's a little bit more complex, but we should be able to explain it and make it logical to you. So we go back to that ethical dilemma that I was in, where insurance companies are paying for it. At that point, you just say, all right, what kind of a dentist do I want to be? What do I want to do? And while I may, early on, by the way, I may have agreed with the patient, well, if insurance cover before I do the periodontal surgery, forget the non-surgical treatment, I may have done that early on. It did not sit well with me. And so very early on, I said, I don't care about insurance coverage. I'm going to do what I think is best for you, or at least I'm going to recommend it. If you as the patient are insurance oriented and you're looking for somebody who's going to help you maximize your insurance benefits, I'm not the guy for you. I'm the guy who's going to maximize the treatment and the outcome of treatment without looking at your insurance company. Now, I still will file for the insurance. I'll still get you maximum benefits for what we decide is in your best interest, but I'm not going to look at the insurance first in order to be able to help you make the right decision.
That's really kind of comes back to how important diagnostic aspects of all this are, because to get to the right place, rather than saying, well, that fits procedure number 6049, so I can bill the insurance company for it, you're actually able to look at the patient and kind of make your best determination and find out what's needed. And then you can come back and ask the question later, say, well, this might fit box 6049 or whatever on that form for reimbursement. But I guess the question is, we've talked about this, and we started to hint at it as we went into the mid-show break, about the value of getting a full assessment before you get started with treatment. In other words, we talked about this, and I was asking that question. It really seems different. It's one thing if I'm pulling through a drive-through and I expect my burger and fries to be the same in Palm Bay, Florida, as it might be in Titusville, as an example. But with dental, it's a little bit more complicated, a lot more customized. And I really think that having somebody to help you determine what's really going on is a crucial factor in getting the outcome that you would hope that you would have. Am I saying that right?
I think you're saying it correctly. If you want a clue as to how weird we are, if people call and say, I want to come in for a cleaning and examination, the answer to us is no. You're not coming in for a cleaning and examination. You're coming in for an examination, so I know what kind of cleaning you need, if you need a cleaning at all. So,
wow, yeah.
But that's our fault in dentistry. We'll see you for a cleaning examination. Why? Why does everybody need their teeth cleaned? Did God make us need our teeth cleaned? Is that the way it really works? So no, the idea, and particularly with periodontal disease, what kind of a cleaning do you need? If you have periodontal disease, a regular cleaning doesn't cover it. It's not going to go below the gum line and clean what you want. So it never cognited with me. It doesn't make sense. And so, yes, you're coming in for a full assessment, a full examination. If you need a cleaning, what kind of cleaning do you need? What do we need to do to be able to control the periodontal disease? And, or are we just doing it for cosmetics, whatever it is? But I need to be able to see you first in order to be able to even understand what's going on in your mouth. I don't want to, I say this to patients all the time, and I said it about 5 minutes ago. I don't want to waste your money. I don't want to waste your money. If I'm not the right person for you, I'm not the right person for you. I want to do something and say, gee, I wish I had done something else. Now, not everything is perfect. Not everything that we do is perfect. We certainly try. But, there's also patient limitations and patient's proneness to disease. And I want to get that out of the way. I want to know what the opportunity is for recurrence or for repeat of that disease process before we spend all your money on repair. Insurance benefits are not that great for whatever the procedure it is. It isn't like insurance covers anything 100% anymore. It doesn't even come close. So it's much more you go to a particular clinic, a particular service medically for diagnosis only. You look at that first, your proneness to disease, whether you have a certain problem, you take some blood tests and things like that. What do you need to do in order to be able to supplement yourself nutritionally? What can you do in order to be able to prevent yourself from needing more services later on? In our practice, we're much more thinking about that. And then once you get to the services, my son does a great job in dentistry. Michelle is a better surgeon than I ever was. And so we get to that point where the services are provided, and hopefully you only need that once, and that's the end, and you go on with your life.
Well, and that's also to the point that we talked about. I think one of the great things that I've learned from you is that I think we were all raised with buy a certain toothpaste, get your twice a year checkups, and make sure you get your cavities under control. And that walked totally by everything about the importance of gum health, which is really kind of the root of all of it. And that's an area that I guess most general dentists don't really refer back to. And I think one of the things that, at least what I've understood is that that's one of the reasons why you offer the Solid Bite Gives Back program, which is a great benefit to us as a nonprofit charity. But the reason that it is so important, not only to us as a charity because it's a fundraiser, we benefit from it, but it really benefits the patient, but it really also benefits you as the dental provider because you have the opportunity to dig deep and really see what's going on and what's the best outcome for that, because that's really what we're talking about, getting kind of a full assessment, right?
It's true. I can't discover deep jawbone lesions, meaning infections in the jawbone, without a CT scan. I can't do it. And so rather than saying, well, I'll see you for an examination, they say, well, you get full-mouth x-rays, that'll cost $150, $200. Get a CT scan, that's going to cost another $200. And all that kind of stuff. No. Pay Helping Seniors of Brevard $50. Just write a check for $50 or more.
Yes.
And let me have all the diagnostic information I need in order to be able to help you make a decision rather than nickel and diming you or $100 you to get all the diagnostic information I need. And I learned that early on. I need that diagnostic information. Well, I don't want x-rays. Well, I don't take x-rays that aren't necessary, but often they are. If you have disease, they are. And let me have all the information so that I can give you what you need. The radiation level on x-rays has gone down to a minuscule amount, the equivalent to days in the sun. That's what we're talking about with what x-ray exposure is like now. Let's get the diagnostic information there so we can say, all right, you need a root canal. Well, how come nobody discovered that? Well, nobody, whatever it was, the diagnostic work wasn't done. That's why I want to spend the time. I don't want somebody leaving me saying, well, why didn't somebody else discover that? I want it all discovered here, particularly when we know now the effect of deep dental infections into your bone and how that can affect your overall health. So it's no longer what you thought it was when you were a kid. We've learned a lot. We not only can do better procedures and do things better, more predictably, but we have more diagnostic information at our disposal, which can make the world of difference for you, both dental-wise as well as overall health-wise.
As you're giving that explanation about the Solid Bite Gives Back program and the reason that it's a great tool for you, it's certainly a great tool for us as a nonprofit that depends on generosity of people to help us keep going. But for sure, it gives you tools that you need. But I was thinking it probably answers also, or helps to answer a question that I wanted to ask you about this as well, is that, I think so many of us will have high anxiety about dental things. Maybe we had a somewhat less than successful visit someplace along the way, or something, or we're just generally kind of pain averse and have all these horror stories about being in a dental chair. I think one of the things that is kind of neat, following with the topic of why private practice is, you guys really go so far out of your way to make patients feel comfortable and unstressed in the dental office. And that almost seems to be, if you'll excuse, it's almost an oxymoron, private practice, but it's almost like your corporate culture there is to do just that.
Yeah, years ago, when I first came to Brevard County, it was one of the first to provide intravenous sedation, and I did it myself, and we still do it ourselves. The doctors do it themselves, but more often than not, we'll bring in a medical anesthesiologist, board-certified medical anesthesiologist into the office to sedate you, and so that if you've had a bad experience, fine, we'll put you to sleep, we'll get the work done, and you'll be done. Our goal, by the way, is not just to sedate you and get the work done. I'm proudest of the people who got sedated, get the major work done, and then they've had a good experience and they continue to have good experiences, and they would never have sedation again because they're so comfortable in our office. And we've got so many of those patients who came in scared to death because of whatever bad experiences they might have had, or whatever bad memories, or people have told them things, or whatever it was, and then they found out they can come into a dental office and be very, very comfortable and know that they're going to be treated well, and they'll have a comfortable experience during and feel good afterwards.
Well, there you have it. So, Dr. Sheldon, we're going to save a minute or two out so we can talk about some events coming up. So I want to give you a chance to grab a pencil and a paper and jot some dates coming up. But real quick, if somebody's interested in that Solid Bite Gives Back program we were talking about, where you can get your full evaluation and really get some insight into what's going on, how does that work again?
Just call the office, 321-259-8000. Say Solid Bite Gives Back, and they'll give you all the details on how you can come into our office. Full examination, x-rays, CT scan for $50 to Helping Seniors of Brevard.
Wow, what a great deal. Well, here's a couple of dates. Thank you, Dr. Sheldon. Here's a couple of dates that I want to ask you to think about for your calendar, because Helping Seniors, we're getting busier and busier with all kinds of neat things all around the county. In fact, Friday, again, we're going to be back out with Lydia Rivera, our ARMP, who leads us in the ARP Walk with the Doc program. That begins 9 a.m. Merritt Square Mall. It's always the second Friday. The group gets bigger and more fun. But listen, here's a fun thing that's going on also on Friday around lunchtime. We are going to be celebrating with Buffalo Wild Wings Go. They're having a grand opening of their Indian Harbor Beach location, and this is going to be a lot of fun. It goes from 11 to 2 p.m. There's going to be lots of great wing tastings and things like that right there at 981 East O'Galley Boulevard. And what's fun is they're partnering with us on things that are going to be happening with the Helping Seniors car raffle. When we get to our grand drawing date of October 26th at the American Muscle Car Museum, they have actually agreed to bring some of their great food out. So we're going to have so much fun with that at the American Muscle Car Museum. But we get to be there for their grand opening. We're going to have Helping Seniors a raffle car out there, some tickets and things like that. But it's Friday the 13th also, so you can join us for Walk with the Doc at 9, and then have a neat lunch at Buffalo Wild Wings Go grand opening right there in Indian Harbor Beach. Couple of things that I also want to quickly get into is the following week we get to our fourth Thursday. We always do a Knowledge College for Aging on the fourth Thursday at 10 a.m. And then we do a wellness series at 11 a.m. And this month, we do this right at Joe's Senior Resource Center, which is our little office at 1344 South Apollo Boulevard, second floor of the Omni Healthcare Building. We have Jackie Erickson with PNC Bank. She's a vice president and branch manager for the branch in West Palm Bay. She's actually going to come out and speak with us about safe banking for seniors, and especially something that we all have to be careful is about identity theft, or protecting ourselves is probably the right way to say it, from identity theft. And then at 11 a.m., we have Stacy Martin from Arosa Care, who's going to talk about a brand new concept. Dr. Sheldon, I think this is very similar to some of the things that we were talking about today about why private practice. They do a program called Concierge Home Care, which kind of gives you an A to Z help as you're aging, and you find that you might be benefiting from having a little extra help. So this is a great chance for you to hear Stacy Martin lay this out, and why this could very well be the future of home health care. So that's going to be Thursday, June 26th, again from 10 to noon. Just block it out. It's always fun. Door prizes, everything else. The Wednesday, the evening before that, the 25th, we're partnering with Omni because we're doing an Alzheimer's and Brain Awareness Month celebration. It's going to be in the lobby, 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. on that day. You're going to hear more about that. You can always find out about everything going on by following us on our Facebook page. We'll keep you updated. So, Dr. Sheldon, thanks for joining us. That's the time that we have for Helping Seniors Radio this week. Look forward to welcoming you right back here at 90.3 FM WEJF next week. See you then.